The International Commission on Stratigraphy, which is part of the Union of Geological Scientists, they discuss boundaries for each epoch, period, and age. They, fight over when they started and like that in Earth's geological history. Based on fossil evidence, they know that there have been 5 great mass extinctions. The stratigraphers all agree that because of human influence, we are well into the 6th extinction, a new epoch they call the Anthropocene. Other proposals were the Catastrophozoic and the Homogenocene. What's behind the Zika crisis? Is Zika, the latest outbreak of mosquito-borne pathogens, a new harbinger of the Anthropocene? The Zika-carrying mosquito, Aedes aegypti, is in the same family of mosquitoes infected with yellow fever, West Nile virus, chikungunya, is that right? And dengue fever. How is Zika related to deforestation, global climate change, and insecticide resistance? Zika was named after the Ugandan forest where it was first found in 1947. Since it left the forest, it's been quickly circulating around the equator, island hopping west and mutating as it goes. The Zika we're seeing now is a relative of the virus that infected Polynesia in October 2013. Since last May, when Zika hit Brazil, the epicenter of the recent outbreak, it has swept across 33 countries in Central and South America and the Caribbean. The World Health Organization says that up to 4 million people in the Americas will become infected with the virus by the end of the year. Zika spreads through mosquito bites and perhaps through sexual activity. A woman in Texas contracted Zika by an infected partner who returned from Venezuela, so they think that it could be that from that too. Some are saying that it might also be spread through kissing, but there's no evidence of that yet. A virus is just a protein shell surrounding RNA, a primitive precursor to DNA. Viruses evolved quickly because they multiply rapidly and because RNA is really unstable compared to DNA. It mutates really easily. Viruses change so fast that scientists don't know how they evolve, which makes it difficult to develop vaccines for the chain of outbreaks that we're seeing now. Scientists debate whether viruses are alive, since they need a host in order to replicate. A virus invades the cell, injects its RNA into the nucleus, and uses the cell's reproductive mechanism to reproduce a millionfold. New evidence now suggests that viruses may buzz around the inside of the cell, meet up, and exchange RNA, which really accelerates the evolution of the virus more quickly than we thought. Zika affects humans with mild flu-like symptoms shown here, but only 20% of those infected with Zika show these symptoms. Once bitten, the incubation period is a few days. Symptoms last less than a week, and after that, one has an immunity to the virus. So it's really not a very harmful flu at all. However, the World Health Organization, calls Zika an international emergency because of the suspected link between Zika-infected pregnant women and the spike in infants born with microcephaly, which means small head. In Brazil, 4,700 cases of microcephaly have been reported since October. Compare that to just 163 cases that they usually have a year. Of those born with microcephaly, about 10% will have no limitations. But for the other 90%, there's a wide range of symptoms shown here, and including miscarriage, death at birth, or they may face a lifetime of these symptoms. Some will have normal intelligence with heads that eventually grow, but they will develop slowly. The women and the poor are hardest hit. To prevent the spread of Zika, officials suggest avoiding the mosquito. Stay inside, use air conditioning, window screens, and insect repellents. However, most countries hardest hit live in poverty with high unemployment rates. People can't afford these measures. In Haiti, Greg said that 85% of the people can't afford electricity. Health officials in several countries have asked women to delay having babies to prevent the increases in microcephaly. However, with the exception of Colombia, contraceptives and abortions are illegal, expensive, and hard to access in these mostly Catholic countries. Nearly 70% of adults in Latin America identify as Catholic. Until yesterday, the Vatican prohibited contraception. But yesterday, the Pope finally caved, and he said, abortion is an absolute evil. It's a crime to kill someone in order to save another. And contraception is the lesser of two evils. So he's now allowing it. Yeah, right? Nice guy. Previously, the church had only condoned natural family planning, or as we know it, the rhythm method, which is only 75% effective according to Planned Parenthood. And if it's found that Zika can spread through sexual activity, the rhythm method is useless. Does Zika cause microcephaly? Well, it's not certain what's causing the increase in microcephaly. A number of studies are looking at the Zika microcephaly link, but none are conclusive. The Brazilian ministry said last week that 41 of the confirmed cases of microcephaly have shown links to Zika, but other studies don't support Zika as the cause. One found that microcephaly seemed to have peaked in Brazil before Zika even appeared. Zika moved north to Colombia in October. However, no cases of microcephaly have been reported there yet. Now, in Cúcuta, a city on the border of Venezuela, most people have had Zika. It's a new hotspot for mosquito-borne pathogens like Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Oxitec, a company out of Oxford University, developed a genetically modified gene that prevents Aedes aegypti larvae from developing into reproducing adults. They inserted this gene, along with a fluorescent genetic marker, into male mosquitoes and released them into an area of Brazil. They did that to males because they don't bite humans. They saw an 82% decrease in the number of people contracting Zika in that area compared to an area that was 1.5 kilometers away. The marker, the fluorescent marker, allows them to count the amount of treated mosquitoes released into the wild so that they can calculate how many to use in the future. Scientists at Columbia University in Anicuya have also been successful in breeding mosquito-resistant Zika, dengue, chikungunya, and yellow fever. Another possible cause of microcephaly may be the insecticide pyriproxyfen, added to Brazil's drinking water a year and a half ago to kill Zika-carrying mosquitoes. On February 3rd, a report was released about an Argentinian research team called Physicians in Crop-Sprayed Towns, and they found that malformations were detected in thousands of infants born in areas where pyroxyfen was added to the drinking water. They also noted it's not a coincidence. Previous Zika epidemics did not cause newborn microcephaly, even in areas where 75% of the population were infected. Since then, one Brazilian state has banned the use of pyriproxyfen. If the birth defects are caused by pyriproxyfen, then the consequences may be far worse than with just the mosquitoes. Insecticides are controversial in both their suspected harmful effects on humans and their efficacy in wiping out pathogens that quickly develop resistance to the poisons. Yet the use of pyriproxyfen and heavy fumigation have been taking place in poor neighborhoods, hardest hit by Zika. Conservative groups and some health officials have even proposed bringing back DDT to control Zika. DDT was banned in the U.S. in 1972 because it killed eagles, poisoned fish, caused cancer, male infertility, miscarriages, and low birth rate. Pyriproxyfen is manufactured by Monsanto, a Monsanto partner, Sumitomo Chemical. Monsanto is one of the big 6 corporations that own the world's seeds, pesticide, and biotechnology industries. They grossed $8.18 billion last year, and they've developed some of the most deadly toxins. An entomologist from the U.S. Defense Department disputed the findings that pyriproxyfen might cause microcephaly. He said, "The toxin doesn't work through the nervous system. Ridiculous. Not credible." His proof was that WHO had been using it for years. It's too early to tell what's causing the increase in microcephaly. As Deirdre Griswold points out, it's not our job to determine the cause of Zika. But as comrades, we do know that all of these possible causes can be traced to the effects of capitalism, imperialism, and the greed of transnational corporations. This is Rob Wallace, an evolutionary biologist and public health expert being interviewed on therealnews.com. Wallace discussed the role of deforestation. Deforestation has an important part to play in the reemergence of many mosquito-borne viruses: avian influenza, SARS, MERS, Ebola, Zika. He claims dengue, yellow fever, chikungunya, and malaria are all going full bore as they move from the forest into farms and cities. Forests are complex, diverse ecosystems that have evolved over millions of years. Diversity keeps mosquito-borne viruses in check. The forest is a source of many infections, but it's hard for them to find a consistently large number of hosts and multiply. Wallace says, in a complex ecology, it's hard for pathogens to line up a bunch of hosts and string together a chain of transmission. Deforestation rips out the forest and replaces it with urbanization and monocultures, a single crop or species of livestock. Cities and monocultures are ripe with hosts for mosquito-borne viruses. Wallace calls these areas wastelands, in which mosquitoes are able to reproduce rapidly. We end up with, quote, "We end up with all sorts of pools of water that allow the females to lay their eggs and produce millions and billions and trillions of offspring." His soon-to-be released book is called Big Farms Make Big Flu: Dispatches on Infectious Disease, Agribusiness, and the Nature of Science. Deforestation increases global warming. Trees contribute to an animal-friendly atmosphere by storing huge amounts of carbon in their tissues, producing oxygen and removing carbon dioxide through the continual process of photosynthesis. Slash and burn deforestation releases stored carbon dioxide and halts photosynthesis. The Scientific American wrote, "Deforestation in tropical rainforests adds more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere than all the cars and trucks in the world's roads." As global warming increases, so do habitats of most pathogen-carrying mosquitoes. They're moving north and they're moving higher in altitude. So we're seeing, like in Colorado where his brother lives, these beautiful forests are just brown, devastated because from this tree moth borer thing. Wallace says deforestation is driven by multinationals and backed by finance, government, and private investments in the form of agribusiness and banks. They are all land grabbing, accelerating deforestation. New York and London are among the main sources of capital paying for deforestation and are creating the world's worst hotspots. When asked why scientists are reluctant to link climate change to viruses, he explained, "It could lead to career suicide. Government agencies are in a tight spot politically, reluctant to fund studies that might try to link broader economy to global warming and deforestation." Cuba's newspaper to Grandma noted on February 10th, "The most disadvantaged will continue to suffer the consequences of major pharmaceutical companies which deal with profit, not a viable solution to stop the pandemic outbreaks of diseases, especially those affecting poor nations." So what's ahead? After the revolution, Fidel said Cuba's future must be a future of people of science. Cuba is famously proactive when it comes to fighting tropical diseases, with years of experience that are useful now that the whole world is turning into the tropics. Socialist Cuba emphasized public health and has prevented a Zika outbreak with an aggressive campaign. You know, in the midst of all this, they have no Zika, with an aggressive campaign to monitor fevers and to clean up places where mosquitoes breed. Notice that Cuba has less dengue fever, yet it has a larger population than El Salvador and Dominican Republic. Cuba is renowned for its recycling programs. Non-biodegradable containers like tires and plastic bags collect water and are ideal habitats for mosquitoes to lay their eggs. In Cuba, trash is put to good use. Plastic bags are washed, rewashed, and rewashed, dried, and used over and over again. This man fixes bicycles with used tires. He takes that heavy rubber and makes little parts for the bicycle. Cuba is famous for their classic cars that they have had since the revolution and been restoring them with spare parts from cars all over the world. Cuba was one of the first countries to develop biotechnology companies, even years before Europe did. Cuba exports biotech and medical products and vaccines to all 5 continents. Cuban infants are all immunized against 13 diseases by vaccines made mostly in Cuba. They've eliminated mother-to-child transmission of HIV and AIDS and syphilis and paved the way for generations to live free from those viruses. Stratologists ponder what our Anthropocene layer will look like in thousands or billions of years. How can we stop deforestation, global climate change, toxic buildup, and toxic resistance, and the spread of pathogens? How can we prevent causing a 6th extinction and become a trash-filled, lifeless stratum on Earth's surface? Make a revolution in the belly of the beast and live like the Cubans. Long live Socialist Cuba. Build a workers' world. Last week the article had a little bit more on global climate change, and there's a whole bunch of talk now about El Nino, and is getting more ferocious. And El Nino isn't just on the west coast; it's bigger than that. And it brought last year it brought big floods to Paraguay and Brazil, and thousands were killed in these floods. And that plus the warm weather, and the rains, the floods, the warm weather are just like the mosquitoes thrive in that. And that's why the whole campaign by Cuba is so much more impressive, because they're killing the vector. The vector is the thing that carries the virus, which is the mosquitoes. They're preventing the reproduction of the mosquito by just cleaning up the water. And you just see around here, just everything's collecting the rain, but it's clean. You look in Cuba, there's no litter, The thing that Sue said about the Pope finally, doing this, well, he's getting flack. In one article it said from the right wing in the Roman Catholic Church, so I don't know if it'll last long. And then Abear's question, that's a great question. It makes me curious, so I'll look into it. We'll talk later. We can both look into it. And one more thing, what Sarah said, the microencephaly can be caused by alcoholism, drugs, genetics, poor diet, a lot of things. I think the significant thing in Brazil is the difference between 163 cases a year as opposed to 4,700 since October. And it's true they don't know how to define it, because it's a size of a head. And they're saying, 2 standard deviations below the normal is that maybe it's very vague, and so are the research is vague. But one new study that they're trying to link it with the Zika is they're using just women and they've cut out women who have a history of alcoholism, or they're just using women without any of the past histories of those things, genetics, drugs, alcohol, to test, to make it, just more isolated if it's just the Zika. Yeah. And that was it. Thank you.